Hello and welcome everyone. Thank you very much for tuning in. This is going to be a special part of the presentation for the lesson on your First Amendment rights. In this part of the lesson, we have presented to you scenarios upon which you have to decide whether or not there was a violation of the law, yes or no. And now, of course, here comes the answers. So what I need you to do is to fill in the rest of the chart by putting the actual answer as to whether or not there was a violation of the law by writing yes or no. And then, of course, in the right part of the chart, the far right, please make sure you type the explanation as we explain why there was or wasn't a violation and given the scenario and the outcome. Let's go ahead and get started. The first round of scenarios comes from the domain of freedom of expression. Scenario 1 is you work at your job after school and on the weekends, and your boss says you have to stop talking so much while you're working. Were your rights violated? The correct answer is no. Private employers do not have to abide by the First Amendment, but in a sense, it would be best if you probably complied with your boss's wishes, and to keep your job and occupation, just comply. Scenario 2, your school suspends you for wearing a t-shirt that protests the U.S. immigration policy. Were your rights violated? The correct answer is yes. Officially, they cannot punish this kind of symbolic speech unless it would substantially disrupt school or disturb the peace. So in this way, of course, that was the wrong course to be taken. Your principal says you can't come home or can't go to school as long as your hair is dyed purple. Are your rights being violated? The correct answer? No. So schools can actually set dress codes and make rules about students' appearance and grooming guidelines. And believe it or not, there's many schools that actually have very strict rules that students must comply to. You do not wish to say the Pledge of Allegiance each morning, and your principal suspends you. Were your rights violated? The correct answer? Yes. The Supreme Court actually ruled that the First Amendment protects your right not to be forced to say something you don't want to say. So in this way, we cannot force you to say the Pledge of Allegiance. All right, let's move on to the next round here. These next two scenarios deal with freedom of assembly and the right to petition. You belong to a service club in your neighborhood, and you hope you'll be chosen to lead an upcoming event. When you are not selected, you decide to gather signatures from other members urging the club leaders to change their minds. The club leaders refuse to accept your petition. Were your rights violated? Correct answer here is no, because private clubs do not have to abide by the First Amendment. In this way, because they operate on their own accord, they can pretty much do what they did. A neighborhood store sells you an iPod or any other electronic device that doesn't work, and the cashier won't give you a refund. You decide to go back into the store with some of your friends and stand inside the front door with signs that say, "Don't shop here." The store owner makes you leave. Were your rights violated? The correct answer is no, because the First Amendment does not give you the right to assemble on private property, so the business owner can technically call members of law enforcement to have you removed. Remember that loitering is a touchy subject. A white supremacist group applies for a city permit to have a march. The city says that they cannot have the permit unless they pay for a large insurance bond. But other groups are given permits for free. Have their rights been violated? This one's a tough one, but the correct answer is yes. So the party could not be prohibited from marching peacefully because the content of their message. In theory, this party would have to be treated the same as other parties as well. Scenario number 8. Your public school principal punishes you for attending an outside demonstration during school hours. Were your rights violated? Once again, this one might have been a tough one, but the correct answer is no. The First Amendment does not give you the right to leave school without permission in order to assemble. So this would be something to keep in mind, of course, for absences in the future, always realizing that you are in fact to be in school. That is the law. Round 3 deals with freedom of the press. We're going to go ahead and look at these scenarios. Scenario 9, you work in a restaurant and your boss treats you unfairly, so you write about what happened on your Facebook page. If your boss finds out, can he or she fire you? The correct answer is no, because private employers do not have to abide by the First Amendment. Yet again, this would be one of those things where it's always best to keep it professional and always realize in the days of the internet, anything that you probably can put out there could get out there in the worst way, so always be professional. Scenario 10, your school newspaper is produced by a journalism class. Can your public school principal object to the content of an article and prevent you from publishing it? Correct answer is so public high school officials can censor school-sponsored newspapers if they have reasons related to safety. So in this way, administration has every right to censor any type of publication from the school because the school is a public government institution. Scenario 11, can your parents prevent you from posting things on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, etc.? This one's a tough one as well, but the correct answer actually is, so no, the First Amendment does not apply to your parents, but you should keep in mind, if you are living with them, it's always probably best to go along to get along in this way. Scenario 12, can the police arrest a professional reporter for writing an article that criticizes the government harshly? The correct answer is, so this protects the right of professional press to write stories critical of government. Would the rights be violated here if they did arrest that professional? Yes, they would. So just add that to the wording here, that obviously people in the media have every right to publish whatever they want about those in government and criticize them harshly. In fact, there's many people in the media who criticize both sides harshly, so this would be a violation. Round 4, freedom of religion. If your parents make you go to church every Sunday, does it violate your right of freedom of religion? So the First Amendment does not apply to your parents yet again, so they can technically make you go to church or any type of religious service. Once again, this kind of comes back to the general theme of being able to go along to get along because they are your legal guardians in this way. Scenario 14, if your private school requires you to say a certain prayer each morning even though you have a different faith, does it violate your right to freedom of religion? Everyone discuss. The correct answer is no. So a private school can require religious activities. In fact, if you know any friends or family members who went to a private school, it's very likely that they had different practices throughout their daily schedule than what we do. If your public school begins a sporting event with a student-led prayer over the school's PA system, does it violate your right to freedom of religion? Correct answer is, so yes, public school-sponsored student-led prayer violates the First Amendment. It might be in the best interest to make prayer voluntary or off to the side as not a main required thing that is being pushed forth, especially by administration. Scenario 16, if your state passes a law that everyone must pay taxes to support a specific church, does it violate your right of freedom of religion? Correct answer is yes, it does. There's separation of church and state embedded in the First Amendment, and of course practiced by governmental affairs over time. So this would be something to keep in mind. So as you guys can see, these scenarios pretty much convey why it's important to understand the First Amendment in all of its different domains and layers, because there's many different times where you might find different experiences interacting with the First Amendment and always wondering where that area of shade of gray or that line in the sand is. So it's always important to know what's right and to separate what's right action from wrong action to protect yourself and those around you. Thank you very much for tuning in. You should be able to finish the rest of your assignment accordingly.